division as well, but also the lectern. And of course she will be speaking when she appears at some point in the not too distant future, we presume, as leader of the Conservatives, which is why we don't have the seal of the Prime Minister on the lectern. What can she possibly say at this juncture as everyone leans forward as someone emerges from the front door of number 10? What can she possibly say beyond a very simple, straightforward reaction to the fact that there has now been something of a challenge to her leadership?
Well, I think if you're those advising her right now in number 10 will be saying to her, obviously, goes without saying, she's got to come out fighting at that lectern. I think you will get a challenge laid down, not to the European Research Group's core that have led to this vote, but to perhaps the next few dozen of MPs who don't like the smell of the withdrawal agreement that she has brought back from Brussels, don't like the idea of the sorts of limited concessions she can plausibly get out of the European Union, but she will try to appeal to them with the spectre, frankly, I think, of a chaotic need to delay Article 50, of what this looks like to the country. She will remind the Conservative MPs that divided parties don't get elected, and the memories of the public of these types of events, they linger long in the memory of the public. So I think that will be the sort of appeal she will try to make. I think her challenge here is that she does seem to be at or very near the end of the road in what she can negotiate in terms of her path on Brexit. She was the one that set her own red lines. She finds herself, frankly, tangled in those red lines right now. It was her approach that led to this situation, and now she's trying to sell a deal that does not have the support of the majority of Tory backbenchers and does not have the support of a number of ministers privately, two junior ministers who are not particularly comfortable with where this is going. I think she just has to appeal to those more pragmatic Brexiters about what the consequences of this will be. Yes, you're going for your perfect, pure Brexit, WTO terms, what they call clean Brexit, but in so doing, are you not risking Brexit at all? The problem, though, with that approach is she has tried that already. She tried that in order to corral MPs behind her deal in the first place, and that failed spectacularly, with the result of that humiliating need to withdraw the actual vote in the first place. So I would say it is going to be quite tough for her. Clearly, she is fighting for her job. She will rail against the chances of a Jeremy Corbyn government. She will do the same at Prime Minister's questions. That is what she will have to do when we see her appearing essentially not as Prime Minister, but as leader of the Conservative Party. But we should step back a little bit, if we can, from the drama of today. This is extraordinary stuff. This is the sort of split now that is not just about a person, Theresa May, it is about a fundamental approach to this historic exit from the European Union with a Conservative Party that may well have irreconcilable splits. You know, parties have splits on smaller issues than the historic issue now facing this country. And this, in a way, is very important in terms of who's the Prime Minister and who's the leader of the Conservative Party. But it's super important, of course, in terms of the country, full stop. The question for me is whether a whole tsunami of discontent from other matters, from her approach to the economy, from her team's occasional lack of engagement with business, from her decision to call an election that was then botched, from those people who fear that if they don't act now, this Prime Minister will see Brexit through, will be unchallengeable for a further 12 months, and then she is all the way through to the next election. So a number of different considerations. Neil.
Faisal, many thanks. Of course, as we continue to monitor events in Downing Street, expecting the Prime Minister in the not-too-distant future. Let's get some reaction from Brussels. Sky's diplomatic editor, Dominic Waghorn, joins us from there. I mean, if you managed to take the temperature, I mean, this was always a possibility, wasn't it, Dominic? And I'm certain that those who work in and around Brussels were aware of it.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't had any official reaction yet. No one's speaking publicly yet in terms of officials here, but I think we can guess their reaction as they wake up to the news on Sky News and their own media today. They will, I think, be aghast at the shenanigans going on in Westminster. We've been saying they've been bemused by what's been going on, the chaos of the withdrawal agreement not being put to the Commons, this mad dash, desperate tour by Theresa May. In a sense, they've been bemused, but possibly not entirely surprised, because they are obviously seasoned diplomats and politicians here. They understand British politics, and it's not been entirely unpredictable what's been happening in the UK. They've always known it's a possibility that this agreement and the whole Brexit saga could cause such a division in the Tory party that this could happen. Having said that, I think they will be shocked still. They will be worried, and they will be aghast, as I say, at what is going on. I think the big concern is the jeopardy for European officials have been negotiating with the Prime Minister is that if she goes, this withdrawal agreement goes as well, and the chances of a no-deal Brexit are much higher. There isn't a huge amount of enthusiasm for the agreement in the sense that it's a negotiated compromise. So people are enthusiastic about it because it's a compromise, it's a way out of this. It has been tortuously negotiated over 2 years, and there are concerns on all sides. You know, not everyone is happy with all of it, that's fair to say. But it is the best option, the only possible deal, as Jean-Claude Juncker, the EU Commission President, put it yesterday. And so I think hanging on Theresa May's future is the future of the withdrawal agreement, and the only deal possible that many people here feel is a feasible outcome for the Brexit negotiations. So I think they will be deeply concerned now about the possibility of that going, and worried about what happens to the Prime Minister and relations with the UK, and what happens, frankly, to the British government and the British Conservative Party. I think, you know, in terms of the timetable, Theresa May was due here tomorrow. She's still due here tomorrow. The EU summit begins tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock. Ahead of that, Donald Tusk, the EU Council President, has set aside time, we think it's ahead of the summit at least, for an Article 50 sort of emergency summit to discuss what's been going on with Brexit in the UK. Theresa May's not invited to that, but obviously she could come along if she is invited, but she will be going to the summit after that. Now, if she loses tonight, the assumption most people are making is that even if she loses as leader of the Conservative Party, she carries on as Prime Minister, but she will be arriving here effectively as a kind of zombie Prime Minister, a political equivalent to The Walking Dead. And what she then does in that capacity has to be guessed at. So it's all up in the air now. Adam, I think we're still looking at that lectern outside number 10 Downing Street. We're still waiting for a reaction from Brussels. But I think it's fair to say there will be a lot of concern amongst people here who have been working with the Prime Minister through thick and thin to make this that Brexit negotiations reach as far as they have, now concerned that all their efforts will have been for naught.
Dominic, thank you very much indeed. As you can see, as Dominic was saying there, the lectern without a crest, which is normal when personal political statements are being made by the Prime Minister, being readied for her. With me is Sir Graham Brady, who is, of course, the chairman of the 1922 committee. And Sir Graham, in very simple terms, you are in charge for now. What's going to happen today?
Process was very simple. If 15% of my colleagues in the House of Commons on the Conservative benches wrote to me as chairman of the 1922 committee requesting a vote of confidence in the leader of the party, then it was incumbent on me to discuss that with the leader of the party, which I did last night on the telephone, and then to move to a ballot as soon as is practicable in the circumstances. The Prime Minister is very keen that we should move rapidly, clearly wants resolution as soon as possible. So we made the announcement, as you know, earlier this morning. She will come and speak to colleagues in the 1922 committee this afternoon at 5, and the ballot will take place immediately after that meeting between 6 and 8 o'clock, with the result declared as soon as we are able to proceed.
And this is in Committee Room 4, actually, in the Palace.
Room 14, the big committee room.
Big committee room. And let's be clear what this is an election for. This is, what, leader of the parliamentary party?
Right. Leader of the Conservative Party.
And therefore, whatever the result tonight, were it to go against Mrs May, she would, for the time being, continue as Prime Minister.
That's right. It's one of the great things about the British Constitution, that it can absorb all sorts of odd things happening. So it is possible for a Prime Minister to lose an election as leader of the Conservative Party, or lose a ballot on leadership of the Conservative Party, remain Prime Minister until such time as a successor is elected by the party. And
without prejudice, really, were she to lose a vote of confidence, what would then happen? Would you then be organising the next
I think I should say, first of all, if she wins the vote of confidence, then there is a 12-month period in which no further vote of confidence could be held. If she were to lose the vote of confidence, then she would cease to be leader of the Conservative Party, and it would be for me to begin the process of organising an election for a new leader who would go on to become Prime Minister. And this is something that would, first of all, entail some parliamentary stages where Conservative members of Parliament would choose our two preferred candidates. Obviously, we would seek to do that as quickly as possible, and then it would go out by postal ballot to all of the members of the Conservative Party in the country.
And how long would that take?
I can't be precise. We could do the parliamentary stages, which would be entirely in the hands of me and the 1922 committee executive really quite quickly. In 2016, it took no more than 10 days. It would be possible to do it more quickly than that. Then the process of a postal ballot around the country would need to be by discussion and agreement with the board of the Conservative Party. It depends how many hustings meetings they wanted to have and things like that.
Of course, last time round, it ended up there was only one candidate, so that short-circuited the process. Do you think that's likely this time round?
It's really impossible to predict. What happened last time was that the candidate in second place, Andrea Leadsom, was significantly behind the candidate in first place. The process that had been set out by the Conservative Party board was quite a long one being proposed then, and I think that was probably one of the factors that led Andrea Leadsom to think it was in the national interest not to proceed.
It is, of course, a minority of Tory MPs who needed to trigger this, only 15%. You sound out the party more broadly. Do you think there was a feeling that with just 106 days to go until we're due to be leaving the European Union, this was the best way of using political time?
I think that will become clear when votes are cast this evening, and obviously colleagues have to weigh up the situation, weigh up all of their preferences. But it is, of course, it's a relatively small part of the Parliamentary Conservative Party, 15%, that is required to trigger a confidence vote. And as you know as well as anybody, there's been speculation going on for months as to whether that trigger had been passed. We've read in newspapers that the 48 had been reached certainly several weeks ago. I've heard it from so many people and I was the only person who would know.
And it hadn't been?
It hadn't been.
You haven't been sitting on it?
I haven't been sitting on it for weeks.
Are you able to tell us exactly how many letters you've got?
No, I don't think that's appropriate, and it's not required in the rules. The rules simply say that when the threshold is exceeded, because it needs to be at least 15% of the parliamentary party. But of course, it's a fluid process as well. People can withdraw letters as well as putting them in. So therefore, it took a little time to be clear exactly what was happening and when that point was.
Now, who exactly gets the vote? Everybody, whether they're a minister on the government payroll or not, in the Conservative Party gets the vote. The Speaker, does he have a vote?
No, all Conservative members of Parliament in receipt of the Conservative Party whip, which would exclude the Speaker, who of course stands for election as Speaker, not as a Conservative Member of Parliament, even though he was originally a Conservative Member of Parliament.
And anyone who's suspended as well?
Anybody who's suspended.
So that would be Mr Elphick?
Remains to be seen whether decisions have been taken in relation to particular individuals. But they would have to be in receipt of the Conservative whip in order to participate in the ballot this evening.
And talk us through the ballot. Is this bits of paper or is it black balls and white balls? I mean, how does it work?
I'm sorry to disappoint, it with pieces of paper, like most ballots that take place. All of the viewers are used to putting a cross in a box on a ballot paper.
Well, we're just waiting for the Prime Minister to come out. She was due to come out a while ago, but as we've seen during this particular political crisis, it has often been that things have been running late. As you can see, the lectern there in front of the Christmas tree. What are your constituents telling you about this? I mean, they know you've got this important role as a sort of shop steward of the Tory party. What are they saying? I mean, do they think this is a good idea, this kind of thing?
I think the experience of politics at the moment, perhaps especially if you start to get into the politics of our relationship with the European Union, you get almost as many opinions as there are individuals. So members of Parliament are not short of advice from our constituents, but the advice frequently conflicts.
Well, just seeing there one of the Prime Minister's aides, I think, testing the microphones and telling the cameras what's going to happen. There isn't going to be, as there isn't normally on this question, I understand, any questions to the Prime Minister. She will just be making a statement. Now, what about government business? Because this is, after all, the moment where government is trying to get an agreed position on leaving the European Union. If there were to be, and I know you're not saying there is, but if there were to be no confidence in the Prime Minister tonight, can parliamentary debate continue?
I think parliamentary debate can continue, the business of government continues, and it's part of the genius of the British Constitution that there is always a Prime Minister. The Prime Minister will remain in office until another Prime Minister is in office. So I think there will be a degree of seamlessness to things regardless of what happens.
But the big question obviously is going to be what's happening about the various bits of European legislation, because clearly this is what's brought this to a head.
And I think this inevitably is one of the reasons why the Prime Minister was very keen that this matter should be resolved as quickly as possible. And I obviously was keen to facilitate that by making sure that we get through this process today.
And if we were to go into a leadership contest beyond Parliament in the country, is that the moment to ask the European Union to stop the clock on leaving, do you think?
Well, I would love to debate all of these issues with you, Adam, and perhaps another time. I think it's quite important today that I remain neutral and independent. Obviously, I'm a member of Parliament. I have my own views.
You've got a vote.
I have a vote.
I guess you're not going to tell us how you're going to go.
I'm not going to say anything. I think the important thing in this process, people, both my colleagues and the wider Conservative Party, but I think the country as a whole has a right to expect that this process will be conducted in a scrupulously fair and independent way. And that will be my focus today rather than giving my own views on matters of public policy.
It is extraordinary, isn't it, going back to Margaret Thatcher, how this question of Europe has put successive Conservative Party leaders into jeopardy. And we could go now to the Prime Minister.
Sir Graham Brady has confirmed that he has received 48 letters from Conservative MPs, so there will now be a vote of confidence in my leadership of the Conservative Party. I will contest that vote with everything I've got. I have been a member of the Conservative Party for over 40 years. I've served it as an activist, councillor, MP, Shadow Minister, Home Secretary, and now as Prime Minister. I stood to be leader because I believe in the Conservative vision for a better future, a thriving economy with nowhere and nobody left behind, a stronger society where everyone can make the most of their talents, always serving the national interest. And at this crucial moment in our history, that means securing a Brexit deal that delivers on the result of the EU referendum, taking back control of our borders, laws and money, but protecting jobs, our security and our precious union as we do so. Through good times and bad over the last 2 years, My passionate belief that such a deal is attainable, that a bright future lies ahead for our country, has not wavered. And it is now within our grasp. I spent yesterday meeting Chancellor Merkel, Prime Minister Rutte, President Tusk and President Juncker to address the concerns that MPs have with the backstop, and we are making progress. I was due to travel to Dublin this afternoon to continue that work, but will now remain here in London to make the case for my leadership with my parliamentary colleagues. A change of leadership in the Conservative Party now will put our country's future at risk and create uncertainty when we can least afford it. A new leader wouldn't be in place by the 21st of January legal deadline, so a leadership election risks handing control of the Brexit negotiations to opposition MPs in Parliament. The new leader wouldn't have time to renegotiate a withdrawal agreement and get the legislation through Parliament by the 29th of March, so one of their first acts would have to be extending or rescinding Article 50, delaying or even stopping Brexit when people want us to get on with it. And a leadership election would not change the fundamentals of the negotiation or the parliamentary arithmetic. Weeks spent tearing ourselves apart will only create more division, just as we should be standing together to serve our country. None of that would be in the national interest. The only people whose interests would be served are Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell. The British people want us to get on with it, and they want us to focus on the other vital issues that matter to them too. Building a stronger economy, delivering first-class public services and the homes that families need. These are the public's priorities, and they must be the Conservative Party's priorities too. We must and we shall deliver on the referendum vote and seize the opportunities that lie ahead. But the Conservatives must not be a single-issue party. We are a party of the whole nation. Moderate, pragmatic, mainstream. Committed to reuniting our country and building a country that works for everyone. The agenda I set out in my first speech outside this front door. Delivering the Brexit people voted for. Building a country that works for everyone. I have devoted myself unsparingly to these tasks ever since I became Prime Minister, and I stand ready to finish the job.
So the Prime Minister there saying, I will contest that vote with everything I've got. She's cancelled her planned trip to Dublin to see the Irish Prime Minister so that she can speak to colleagues. But the big message to the MPs, the Conservative MPs, the 316 who are going to take the decision about her future tonight, is she says, if you spark a leadership contest now, that will almost certainly lead to having to delay or even call off the Brexit process. And she also said that power, the real control of what happens in Parliament, will shift from the governing party, from the Conservatives, to the opposition, who probably will be able to command the votes on a vote of confidence or on anything else. And the other point Mrs May made